Welcome to From the Shed End. I hope you're all doing well. We're back with another video. There's still a lot more to talk about. But before we get into today's video, please go and subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well. And also the Linktree link in the description that will take you to all our podcast episodes and all our social media handles as well. So make sure you give them a follow. Now, yeah, well, wow. I mean, I'm still not over the Bournemouth game. I'm going to be honest. I'm still not over the Bournemouth game, but we are where we are. And this is what we are now. Like I said yesterday, we're a mid-table team. We're a team that has to just understand our place in the league. And we have to understand that we're not the Man City of the league. We're not the Liverpool of the league. But I do want to talk about a couple of things because, again, a couple of comments after my video, couple of sort of messages that I received was about the team, about the squad. And in some ways, I agree with a lot of things that were being said to me in terms of the lack of leadership in the team. You know, we look around that team now, you know, and I think the captaincy kind of tells you that as well, that there isn't really many leaders. And I think within a good team, any team or anything, it doesn't have to be football. It just has to be something, a collective of people. There has to be a leader. There has to be leaders. There has to be people that speak up and guide other players, the more younger or inexperienced players. But there has to be leadership in the team. And you look at this Chelsea team now, going back to the, you know, days of old, you know, Dennis Wise. You think back to when we had, you know, John Terry. We had even Didier Drogba to an extent. You know, we had Gary Cahill, you know, Aspilicueta, Ivanovic. You know, we've had players in this team that have been leaders, that have been able to galvanize the team when they need to do it. You know, you look now, we don't have that. We don't have any leaders. We don't have anyone that you could think will go into that dressing room and do what maybe John Terry's done before in the past. Frank Lampard's probably done at some point. I know he was one of the quieter ones, but you could still see that he gained a lot of respect from a lot of the players in that dressing room, as much as he probably didn't talk as much. And I'm not talking about Frank Lampard, the manager, or Frank Lampard, the player, but we don't have any leaders. Even maybe you look at Thiago Silva as our leader, as our real leader in terms of being able to have a voice in the dressing room. I don't see that with any of the other players. You know, Raheem Sterling, I think, is probably the next, in terms of age, the oldest out of the group of players that we've got. And I don't think he would even be someone that would probably speak up as much. Maybe he does, but I don't get that vibe from him. I don't get that sense of, I'm going to speak up in this dressing room and tell you where you need to do or what you need to do. I don't get that from him. Chilwell, another one, I don't get that from him. Reece James, I don't get that from him. And Reece James is the captain of the club. So I do worry that one of the things that we're struggling with on and off the field as well is the lack of leaders. You know, we don't have a goalkeeper that really, in my opinion, is going to command and tell his defence what he needs to do. Is going to shout at someone. You know, you see that in good teams. You see that there's leaders in teams where they actually have someone that's going to tell you on the pitch. They'll tell you. As much as, you know, we banter sometimes about Van Dijk when he makes a mistake, but we can tell that Van Dijk's a leader. You can tell that he's a leader. United, they had Roy Keane at one point. He was a leader. Leaders. You know, you need someone that's going to be able to get in your face and tell you that you're not doing something right or that you need to do something. And we don't have that. We don't have anyone in that team that I can see. And if you disagree, let me know in the comments. But we don't have any leaders. So I worry that's one of the, for me personally, that's one of the factors as to why we're not doing so well on the pitch and why we need to try and do better. But if you don't have the leaders on the pitch, you're already failing at something already. And I think that's one of the biggest, the key things for us is that we don't have the leaders on the pitch. But I also think now as well, looking back to the two transfer windows in the summer, the one last year and the one that's just recently happened and closed, I look at that transfer strategy and the transfers that we've brought in. And I think I've said this before, that this now is not a football club. You know, Roman Abramovich, he probably treated it as a business to an extent, but he definitely wanted to make sure that the club's best interest was first. And he brought in the players that he knew instantly would try and do better or would try and guide the club to a league or try and guide them to a Champions League. Those are the things that Roman Abramovich wanted to do. And I feel now that we've switched over, like I said yesterday, we're in this transitional point where, we have to understand that the club want to try and do things slightly different, but this is more a business franchise kind of vibe that I'm getting from this club now. I look at the players that we've signed, and yes, some of them have a lot of potential, but the key word is potential, not proven. Their potential ability is high, but we don't know if they can actually do it. So we've spent, let's just say, £1 billion. Let's just round it off to a nice billion on players that might actually be a good fit for Chelsea. But there's a percentage and a slim chance that they're not a good fit for Chelsea. And that is the worry now. When you look at the amount of players that we've got, the deals that they're on, 8-year, 7-year deals, to cover the cost, to spread the costs of the transfer and to try and beat FFP and all the rest of it. And you look at some of these players, we don't even know if they've got the ability to play at the top level or to play in the Premier League. We don't even know that. Even Nkunku, I said yesterday, he's one of those players that we vitally need in that team. I'm just basing that off his time at Leipzig and also the preseason that he had at Chelsea. But we don't know if he can even do it in that. We've seen better players come to the Premier League and fail. So it's a massive gamble that we've taken. And I feel that a lot of these players that we've brought, I feel like the club have brought them with no real intention of integrating them into the squad. I feel that obviously it's a business. They've signed some of the best youngsters, the crop of players that, in the next 5 or 10 years will go on to be eventually probably some of the best in the world. But because of that, and especially how I believe some of the contracts are written up, they'll be able to sell them on for a lot more than they've brought them for. So I get from a business perspective, it makes a lot of sense what we've done. But we need players now that can do, and I say we need players. We should not need players after spending £1 billion on players. We should not need to go out in the January window and spend more money, which we're going to get onto in a minute. But I feel that we need players that can actively play in the Premier League now. It's great having players for the future. I mean, it's always good to plan ahead. And, I think, if we're looking at the players now that potentially we've signed in the last 2 windows, could any of them walk into that team now? You could probably say yes, but are they good enough to play in the league and in our team? You could probably say we don't know because we've never seen them play. So there's a lot of question marks over the players that we've signed. And I feel now we're not a club. When Roman was the owner, we felt like a football club. We felt like we were going in the right direction. I feel now we're very much like any other club. The Glazers at United. You're looking at the issues that Arsenal had at the moment. Even Everton, the way that Everton is being run, it's more business minded. It's more about how can the owners and people who have an investment in the club, how can they make more money? How can they, even in terms of, the lack of sponsorship, I feel like there's that scrambling around trying to find the best deal to get the best sponsor for the shirts and just things like that. I mean, we're more business now. We're more about business. You look at all the things off field, all the partnerships and everything else. It's more of a business now, and a lot of things have been said around Todd Bowley and the rest of the hierarchy around, this long-term process. They've been saying that since Graham Potter. And if we're being honest, we haven't really seen anything. Like I said in the video yesterday, we haven't seen anything to make us think we're actually improving with this squad after £1 billion. We're not actually improving. So there's a massive worry in terms of the amount of players we've signed and the fact that there's still no or little improvement in terms of what we're trying to do. When Graham Potter was here, it was, we're going to give him years rather than months to get it right. And obviously that couldn't work because we would have probably been playing championship football. If that had gone on, we would not be in the Premier League right now. But we have to obviously give Pochettino the time. I think he needs the time. But there needs to be the ownership, the director of football, the technical director, Pochettino, all have to be on the same page. And if they're not on the same page, it ain't going to work. Because you feel like some of these signings that are coming in, I'm not sure if Pochettino is green ticking them, is signing them off. But it doesn't feel like there is a connection between ownership and a manager And that again, that's a massive worry because, you look at some of the players. I mentioned Conor Gallagher being captain on Sunday. Are these things that Pochettino is actually wanting in his team? Is this the owners stepping in saying this player needs to be captain or he should be playing, or we don't know. So it's a massive grey area, but I do worry that even looking at the squad now, and yes, we've got loads of good potential, but the key word, I'm going to say it again, potential, because we don't know, again, if some of these players are even good enough to play in the league for Chelsea. And I feel like a lot of them have just been signed to then sell on in 4 or 5 years or 8 years in some aspects, and then triple or quadruple the fee that we paid for them. So the business side is brilliant, we're covered, but we need instant reaction from this team now. I'm not talking Europa League, top 4, champions of England. I'm not talking any of that. I'm just saying we need to put in a good, consistent run of games and a better performance as well. I mean, let's have it right. The performances have not been good either. They've not been good. So we need to start putting in performances, getting the 3 points and building from there. And I believe that Pochettino is the man to do that. But I think he's lacking, and I said yesterday, he hasn't got a striker that he's happy with. We still, again, we're relying on Nkunku. We're relying on Armando Broja to come back and to prove himself in the team. I've been saying it all for nearly a year now, and it's one thing that was flagged. If anyone watched Monday Night Football last night, Sky Sports, you'll know that Thomas Frank was on there, and he almost alluded to the fact that Ivan Toney will not be at Brentford after Christmas. He expects bids to come in. He expects them to come in. But again, we're talking about spending more money. And, again, Thomas Frank said, when clubs come for Brentford players, the money's going to be a lot more than what they expect it's going to be. And Ivan Toney is a player that has already proven that he can get 20 goals a season in the Premier League. He's someone that is going to have a handful of clubs after him in January. And I think with Brentford, they've already resigned to the fact that Mbeumo and Wissa are probably going to be the two that will go forward for them as striking options, and Ivan Toney will move on. And I think that's probably the best thing. I think, again, if you listen to the Stephen Bartlett podcast with Ivan Toney, again, he referenced that he wants to play at the top level. Now, the question is, are we one of the clubs that he wants to go to in terms of the top level? Because we're not in the Champions League. It looks like we're not going to get Champions League again this season as well. So does he actually want to come to us, or does he want to go to a club where he has the opportunity to win the Champions League, to play in Europe? So, and let's be honest as well, we've had some strikers come to this club, brilliant strikers, probably better than Ivan Toney, who were banging goals left, right, centre before they joined Chelsea. They joined Chelsea and it dries up, So I could go on and pull out a list. I only have to mention Fernando Torres being one of them, although he scored some really good goals for us. But my point is that we don't have something in that team that tells me that if we sign Ivan Toney, he's going to bang 20 goals for us. There's just nothing in that team that tells me that. So that's a worry, a massive worry, because we should be, after £1 billion, we shouldn't even be thinking about going to spend more money. It doesn't make any sense. Even the two areas that I mentioned on yesterday's video, striker and goalkeeper, whilst editing yesterday's video, I look on my phone and I see that we're linked with Aaron Ramsdale. Of all goalkeepers, we're linked with Aaron Ramsdale. Now, I think this is just tabloid news. I think it's just news to generate a bit of talk. But if there's any percentage of truth in this story, we are in trouble this season. And I'm not saying Aaron Ramsdale was a bad goalkeeper, but it tells me that the owners and the people making the shots in terms of transfers, or calling the shots in terms of transfers, they're not on the same page. They're really not. Because if you look at the goalkeepers and the profile of goalkeepers that we should be going for, we're not going for them. We're not going for them. Diego Costa, for me personally, would have been a really good goalkeeper that we could have got. I just don't get it. I don't get why we're linked with Aaron Ramsdale. I'm hoping Arsenal don't. I mean, I don't think Arsenal will sell him, especially to Chelsea as well, try and strengthen another club in London. But I just think if we do go for him, it tells me that the the way that Pochettino and whoever's calling the shots in terms of transfers, they're well away from each other. They're not on the same page, which is a bit of a worry as well. It's just, like I said yesterday, let's get back to reality. Obviously, we've got a nice week of no football. And yeah, we've got one game a week. We've obviously got Aston Villa this Sunday coming up, which will be an interesting game because we're back at the Bridge. We're on at 2:00 kickoff. But yeah, I mean, we've got to get 3 points there. But it won't be easy, as I've said before. So we're going to preview that one later on in the week. But let me know what you think. Is Todd Boehly, is the hierarchy, is Maurizio Pochettino on the same page? Do we actually need to go and get Ivan Toney? Is Ivan Toney going to be the saviour for this club? Is it going to be too late as well? Because we won't be signing him till January. And by then we could be talking about 17th, maybe 18th relegation battle at the time of signing him. And also as well, do you think that we need to go and get Aaron Ramsdale as another goalkeeper option with Robert Sanchez competing for number 1? Let me know what you think in the comments as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll be back tomorrow with another video.